Good evening. I just want to welcome you to Chicago State University. I also would like to thank the organizers for this event. I'd like to thank the Coalition of African American Leaders. I'd like to thank the Young and Powerful Group. I'd like to thank the students at Chicago State University. I'd like to thank the administration and academic affairs and student affairs and public relations and marketing for all the work they put into making this event happen. And I'd like to thank our moderators, Mr. Charles Thomas from ABC 7 News, and and Ms. Robin Robinson. And I will be brief because I want to hear the candidates just as much as you do. So what we're going to do this evening, the first candidate that will come up will be Mr. Chuy Garcia. And Mr. Garcia will answer questions for an hour, and then we will have a short break, and then we will have Mayor Rahm Emanuel. No. Now, I'm glad that we just had that because now I want to introduce Minister Sylvia Jones, who's going to talk to us about the rules of engagement for this evening. So please join me in welcoming Minister Sylvia Jones.
First, giving honor to God, who's the head of my life. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kelly. They say there's two people that you never give the microphone to. One is a minister, and the other one is a woman. One talks too long, and the other one talks too much. And I won't be long. The desired outcome of this forum is for everyone to leave today's forum with the clear knowledge of the candidate's position and legislative recommendations. Please respect one another in this process. Mostly important, respect the moderator. In this case, the moderators. We ask that you not carry on side conversations so that the person in front, back, and the side of you may hear the candidate. No obscene hand gestures or outbursts. Please cut off your cell phones or put them on vibrate. If you have to take a call, please remove yourself from the room or not use them at all. This is a state facility, and the distribution of political signs, buttons, brochures, etc. are prohibited inside or on the grounds of the campus. Be aware that there are state campus police in the facility. We ask that the candidates respect the time that has been allowed to them. It is our collective hope that all present will cooperate. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Now, I want you to pay attention. We have a live Twitter feed where people will be making comments throughout the evening on social media. We also will be taking questions from the audience throughout this evening for both candidates. And so now we're ready to get started, right? So now let me introduce our esteemed moderator, Mr. Charles Thomas from ABC 7 News.
First, giving glory to God, who has brought me this far. And I just wanted to say that, you know, during this campaign, I have covered, it seems every day, if certainly every 2 or 3 days, I'm doing stories about the black vote and how critical the black vote is to the outcome of this runoff. We've been at this now, I think Tuesday yesterday represented an entire month or 4 weeks. And there has yet to be a debate or a forum focused on what black people think about this election. And that's what makes this event so critical. You know, what we want to do tonight is to have a conversation. My colleague, Robin Robinson, is there in the audience. She has a microphone. She's going to be working the crowd, if you will. We have an esteemed panel here who I will introduce in a minute, who will ask questions of each candidate as they appear here. And we want to, again, have a conversation, a civil conversation. We want our community to speak to these two candidates and to have these candidates speak to us about issues that are of particular concern to us. Now, those could be citywide issues as well as issues that affect our community, because after all, we are part of this larger city. I would just pray that we maintain civility during the hour that we have with each of these candidates, that we show both of them as much respect as we would show anyone who would come into our home. I'd like to thank Chicago State University for facilitating this event, because if Chicago State had not done it and had not been insistent that this event happen, it wouldn't be happening. And I think that we need to give Professor Harris and everyone here at this institution credit for that. I believe at this point, this is the point that I introduce our panelists. And I'm going to introduce them from, I guess that would be your right to left, but the gentleman sitting on the end nearest the audience is Professor Philip Beverly, a professor of political science here at Chicago State University. Sitting to his immediate right is Wendell Mosby, the Chief Executive Officer of Young, Black, and Powerful. To his right is Charles Preston, who is a student here at Chicago State University. And to his right is Kim Delaney, who is another professor here at Chicago State University, her area, African American Studies. Oh, he's here. Very good. And of course, we would like to introduce our first candidate who will appear here at the forum, Jesus Chuy Garcia, Commissioner in Cook County. Welcome, Jesus Chuy Garcia. Again, we're going to be relaxed here tonight. We're going to sit down and we're going to have a conversation. And we're going to start, I think, on the panel. Panelists, are you ready? Let's start with Professor Beverly. What's on your mind concerning Chuy Garcia and his candidacy for mayor of the city of Chicago?
It's actually about public schools. It's actually about public schools.
Sure.
If the CPS is broken, as it's been oft reported, do you support investing in fixing or replacing?
Could you repeat the question? It didn't quite transmit.
I didn't understand it either.
It's much more a philosophical question. Do you support fixing the schools or replacing them?
I'm not sure I understand the...
I think fixing schools
or replacing them.
Right.
That, you know,
The mayor, it seems to have used a replacement strategy.
is it me too? It's in your pocket. Very good. Is that better? Okay, very good.
In closing schools, the mayor's closed a number of schools during his tenure. That doesn't seem to fix the problem. That seems to be replace. And so philosophically, where are you? Are you a fixer or do you just replace?
I believe that in order for Chicago to have a robust system of public schools everywhere in the city of Chicago, we need to invest significantly in order to do that. The Chicago public schools are underfunded, and we suffer from a structural deficit related to how we pay for our educational system. The formula that we use is primarily property taxes to do that. So every year, every few years, we're in a struggle to figure out how to make ends meet. Unless we change the revenue source, we'll always be in this dilemma of either having to fix or replace the schools. What we need is equitable, sustainable funding for the future. Is part of the reason why I believe that we need to move toward a graduated state income tax that is progressive, so that we are not in this annual crisis and then being pitted, education versus healthcare versus mental health, and so on and so forth. If we're going to be a good state of Illinois and a city that invests in all its children, we must have sustainable funding sources. So I am an investor in our public school system to give us a robust, and I hope I interpreted your question correctly.
But Commissioner, you know, the last two mayors, Richard M. Daley and now Rahm Emanuel, have talked about the same problem, trying to change the formula for funding schools. What will you do as mayor in Springfield, where this is best? What will you do as to fix it differently than Rahm Emanuel?
The crisis has only worsened and deepened since the two mayors that you made reference to wanting to change it. The crisis will force us either to come up with a solution that is long-term and sustainable, or we will have failed public education, and it opens up the door to the worst alternative.
What do you do in Springfield? What are you going to do in Springfield differently?
Because I have relationships in Springfield as a former state senator, because I understand what the problem is and why the system is broken, I will be in Springfield working actively to help change the funding formula to move away from the regressive system that we have in Illinois to a more progressive system as it relates to essential basic services like education and healthcare, the basic, what ought to be guarantees in terms of human rights for every individual in the state of Illinois.
Well, I represent young black professionals. And I'm also familiar with you, Chuy, because I'm also a member of the Harold Washington Legacy Committee, and so I do know history, I do know your involvement. But my question is, today, in 2015, what have you done or what will you do for young professionals to believe that there'll be a role they can play in your administration if you're elected?
My administration will look like Chicago at all levels, in my cabinet, in the department heads, in the appointments that I will make. to the sister agencies that the mayor virtually controls. Chicago Public Schools, until we move to an elected school board, that will be one of my priorities in Springfield upon being sworn in as mayor. And if Springfield doesn't legislate that, I'm willing to go into the federal courts to ensure that will be one. But I will also appoint Chicagoans, representative of the entire city, to the Chicago Park District Board, to the City Colleges Board, okay, to the Chicago Park District Board. Chicago can only move forward as one city when we embrace all of its people, all of its communities, and ensure that everyone is an active stakeholder with an outcome that they want to see and an outcome that they have a voice and a vote in shaping. My administration will find the best talent of Chicagoans, and of course that cuts across age. We will not be hampered by ageism in an administration. As I've sat with young people over the past 5 months, they have raised my awareness about the exclusion of young people. That will also occur on commissions, on boards, on task forces that will be created to address particular issues that need addressing as we move forward in the formulation of policies and procedures of how to run a government that is inclusive.
Commissioner, as you mentioned young people, we have a young person on our panel, Charles Preston, who is a student here at CSU. What's on the minds of young people, students, what are they thinking about, Charles, when it comes to this election? I know many of them are going to vote in this election, some for the first time for a mayor.
I can't speak for all students.
Of course not.
But I'll say what's on my mind. I want a mayor that reflects what we are thinking. I want a mayor that reflects, that's willing to work in our communities, that's willing to work with our people.
Well, what's the question, though?
Yeah.
We're not going to give speeches, guys. We're going to ask questions.
A question. Unemployment for African Americans in Chicago is 25%, and that's the highest out of all racial groups in the city. What would you do to encourage job creation and job readiness in predominantly African American neighborhoods that have the highest unemployment rate?
In the first place, I would be cognizant that when decisions are made, that they do not have a disproportionate impact on African Americans. Over the past 8 years, when there have been layoffs at City Hall, in the Chicago public school system, the brunt of the layoffs have impacted communities in the south side of Chicago and the west side of Chicago. The school closings exacerbated this reality. This only contributes to creating the conditions and fostering and perpetuating the conditions of inequality and the concentration of poverty in the areas that have the highest levels of poverty. Youth unemployment in the African American community is estimated to be just over 90%. That is intolerable and unacceptable. It contributes significantly to much of the violence that we've seen play out on Chicago streets.
But Commissioner, let me ask you a really, really tough question.
Sure.
A lot of us, when we travel through our community, we can be in Chatham, we can be in Inglewood, we can be in Roseland, and we see those city street crews working, repairing streets in our communities and sewers and curbs. And we look at those people, we say, man, how did the whole crew get to be Latino? How will you, as the city's first Latino mayor, deal with that phenomenon, that problem that we have?
First mayor who happens to be Latino, Charles.
Thank you, okay.
All of my life as a public servant, and it began very early, has been rooted in the belief in fairness and equity, including a commitment to racial equity. It recognizes historical barriers that have been created and that have kept people from enjoying equal opportunity. My values are such that I recognize that we as a society cannot move forward, cannot advance until there is equal opportunity. At different points in time, it's required removing those barriers. I have been the beneficiary of legislation, federal legislation, civil rights legislation, for example, that enabled me to get elected. In 1965, because of the courageous men and women who engaged in the March on Selma, it gave us the Voting Rights Act. In 1986, because of the Voting Rights Act and our fight in federal court to overturn a discriminatory ward map in the city of Chicago, I became elected to the city council, and I held Harold Washington by the same token.
But I hear you on all that. I hear you on all that. But I mean, in terms of these work crews,
yes.
I mean, as mayor, would you have to say, perhaps to a subcontractor, hey, you're going to have to lay off some Latinos and hire some blacks? Would you be willing to do that?
I am committed to fairness and equity, and that means the numbers tell the story of whether we're succeeding or not. I will have an administration that not only talks the talk, but walks the talk.
Parity.
Yes, and I will ensure that from the top down, not just in streets and sanitation or the other infrastructure departments, at every department at the city of Chicago, that as we hire, we seek to ensure that every department looks like the city of Chicago and its people.
Dr. Delaney. Dr. Kim Delaney, who is a professor of African American Studies here.
Okay, Mr. Garcia, violence is a big problem in Chicago, a big concern. Do you still believe you should add 1,000 new police officers? If so, how would you pay for them? Where would you put them? What new processes or training might you implement to try to prevent more of the same contentious relationships that currently exist between Chicago police officers and minority communities?
Excellent question, Doctor. The city of Chicago, over the past 4 years, has suffered 10,000 shootings, heading up now toward 11,000 shootings, almost 2,000 homicides. Many of those homicides, of course, remain unsolved. And you read the stories yesterday in the Chicago dailies that the police department doesn't have enough detectives to investigate the homicides. That's only a part of the story. In order to reduce the number of shootings in Chicago, the most important violence reducer, preventer, homicide preventer are jobs. Good paying jobs to everyone in the city of Chicago, number one. There are other things that we can do, such as train and expose more people to the practice of restorative justice. We have some restorative justice practitioners in this community. Do I think we still need 1,000 additional police officers, men and women? I do. I think that unless, I respect your view, I believe that unless we're able to train more police men and women who look like the people in Chicago neighborhoods where the violence exists, to engage in establishing relationships of trust, mutual respect, and accountability, the violence in our communities in the short term will not abate. As we continue to fight for looking for as many resources as possible in job creation, in positive alternatives for youth, to reduce the 92% unemployment rate, especially among African American males in those communities. Unless we address those things, then the police by themselves can't do it. But a part of it has to be establishing, once again, relationships of trust, mutual respect, and accountability. I am convinced of that. As someone who has been a practitioner of reducing violence in my own community, in other communities, banded together to advance public policies that provide positive alternatives while seeking to reduce incarceration rates, especially of people of color in Illinois and in Chicago.
Commissioner, but you know, I have to follow up, and you know, I know that you've said that your fiscal plan is a work in progress, something that you're going to develop after you are inaugurated, but I got to ask this question now. How are you going to pay for 1,000 new police officers, because I think our audience, we pay taxes. They want to know how you're going to do that.
Certainly,
And they should.
And they should.
Try to
well, first of all,
bridge the answer here.
We begin with taking half of the $100 million that we're presently spending on overtime for police in Chicago. You begin hiring those officers, training them in community policing, in engaging people in the community, residents, organizations, churches, etc., while you ensure that we find the rest of the money. We're not going to hire 1,000 police officers, in June of next year. The process will be a lengthy one. There will be a series of cohorts that occur over that time. What are some of the potential revenue sources? Expanding, modernizing the sales tax is one way to do it, ensuring that it doesn't have regressive impacts on low-income people.
That sounds like a Rahm Emanuel.
No, mine's protects against regressive impact on neighborhoods and low-income people in Chicago, low-income earners.
But you want to expand the sales tax?
Certain categories of sales.
Like services?
Yes, and for higher-end users in particular.
But that's what the mayor has as part of his program.
He hasn't defined it. He has said just expand it in general. I want to protect against things that are consumed in neighborhoods like dry cleaning and nails and taking your dog to the veterinarian, things like that, to make it more progressive.
I think you're making some news here, though, because you're saying now that you're signing on to his.
No, I'm not signing on to his. The sales tax has been around for a long time.
Generally, though.
I'm saying that that's one potential source. A luxury tax on luxury goods is another. There are additional savings to be had. For example, the paper last week reported the Inspector General has said that we can save over $6.6 million in streets and sanitation if we simply begin to collecting fees that private users are getting for free at the present time. Many other savings of that nature.
Look, I'm going to have to throw it out there to my colleague Robin Robinson. She has index cards that she's been working with the audience to get you to ask your questions on a card. Robin, maybe you can explain the deal here. What are we doing here?
Is my mic going to work? Very good.
There you go.
So
it works better than mine.
I'm just sounding better. It's getting better as time goes on. The devil's in the details of the audio. So I have Chicago State honors students here. We have a group of them here. Can we give them a hand? Because they're over here working hard. And if you're an honors student, you're already working hard. We have more questions from the audience and from their monitoring of our Twitter feed than we will possibly get to. So I'm going to ask you, Mr. Garcia, if you would keep your answers as short as possible, because they had to keep their questions short, 140 characters right on Twitter. So it's okay. I will do that. So it's only fair that you've been seeing some of the tweets going by. The hashtag, by the way, wow, I'm getting very godlike here. My audio sounded really good. Hashtag CSU votes. You guys have probably seen it on the screen, but those of you at home who are listening on WVON, hashtag CSU votes. So I'm going to start right here with my very first honor student. What is your name?
Hannah.
Okay, Hannah, you're a student here at Chicago State studying what?
Psychology.
I don't think she expected me to ask her that question. She looked so surprised. All right, the best question out of all these tweets that you've seen, give me your best question for Commissioner Garcia.
What do you plan to do about the gang/gun violence?
Oh, that's a good one for a quick answer, right? Did you hear that? What do you plan to do about the gang/gun violence? Yes.
One, when I'm elected mayor, within the first 90 days, I will convene a public safety summit involving people and stakeholders in neighborhoods throughout the city of Chicago. Why is that important? It cannot simply be the police. It cannot be the usual suspects. The experts in coming up with strategies to reduce that are young people, are people in Chicago neighborhoods who see and live the violence each and every day. I will take their lead in terms of coming up with solutions. I have some ideas of my own, but I think that stakeholders are the best solvers of problems.
Okay, so a summit that's going to give you some ideas.
Yes, a public safety summit.
All right, there is from the audience as well a question along those lines about who's involved in public safety and deciding who's right and who's wrong. And this actually was not for you, but I think it applies to either candidate. From 2007 to 2014, there were 312 completed investigations of police shootings, and out of those 312 investigations, only one police officer was found to have violated any sort of rule. So, and they say since that time that they found out that shooting was justified as well. Basically, it's talking about the review process. What do you see wrong with that picture, if anything, and what would you do to address it?
I think that in terms of police accountability and the Independent Police Review Authority, it matters who the members of that panel are. When I appoint members to that panel, I will ensure that there is a cross-section of individuals who are independent and unbiased toward any institution or individual so that they can render fair decisions in their findings. So having independence and integrity of the individuals is paramount.
Okay, we have time for one more quick tweet, one more quick Twitter question, and tell me your name, young man. Thank you for standing up.
My name's Brandon.
And what do you do here at Chicago State besides stay on the honor roll?
I'm a pre-physical therapy major.
All right, well, I'll need that soon.
All right, so my question is, what is your plan to make Chicago a more attractive place for companies to provide not only more, but also higher paying jobs?
Good question.
In order to attract more companies and investment to Chicago, with the outcome being the creation of jobs and job opportunities, as well as other economic development opportunities in the neighborhoods, so as to end the tale of two cities in Chicago by seeing neighborhood revitalization and job creation. We've got to make neighborhoods safer in Chicago. We cannot continue to be one of the most violent cities in the country. We also need a robust system of public neighborhood schools in every neighborhood with equity, meaning good teachers, meaning good technology, meaning good books and good support systems. I also have put forth the idea, and I'll be talking about it more tomorrow, about investing in redeveloping and expanding and modernizing Chicago's port. The Port of Chicago, also known as the Illinois Port Authority, has tremendous potential for attracting industry to the South Side, for renewing the South Side. It has access to Europe. It has access to the Gulf of Mexico. It is an international asset that has yet to be developed. It can be a very important anchor toward neighborhood revitalization, especially on the South Side, in additionally supporting the rail, the air, and the transportation networks that we have in terms of highway in Chicago, and keeping Chicago a leader in that.
All right, those 140 characters really got stretched out, but thank you.
There is, you said something earlier, Commissioner Garcia, about expanding the sales tax, which again is something that Rahm Emanuel has talked about doing as part of his answer to solving the city's fiscal woes. Now, you have said that you really won't come up with a complete and comprehensive plan until after you're able to study.
No, till the books are open,
until
Charles.
The books are open.
Not
You're able to study.
We've been
study
studying
the books.
Yes.
Study the books, see where the money is. But isn't that something new tonight? I mean, that you're saying that you would consider an expansion of the sales tax, which again is something that the mayor doesn't control. It has to be done in Springfield.
Correct.
But you're on the same page then with the mayor.
No, I'm not on the same page. I qualified. He doesn't own the sales tax.
Well, of course
no one
not.
does.
Nobody.
It's something that we enacted and that we tweak from time to time. It's time, because of the financial straits that we live in, to consider it. What I want to protect.
Time to consider.
What I want to protect against is its regressive impacts. Sure. What are some of the worst instances? The red light cameras, one of the worst instances. The fees, fines, and penalties that people have suffered over the past 4 years. That's what I'm getting at. But Charles, seriously, what I have said, and I mean this, because Chicagoans are entitled to know where the revenues are going. And Chicagoans are entitled to know where they're going to stop going in terms of the corporate welfare and the subsidizing of the rich and well-connected in Chicago. So in order for me to say, I'm going to enact this tax, I'm going to support that tax, I want to open the books and have independent audits of the financial statements, as well as performance audits of the departments. Chicagoans are entitled to this before they are shouldering any new taxes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Guys, hey, I think it really, if we cheer our guy and boo the other guy, that's not going to really be a productive way to deal with this tonight. I think we just need tonight and then
take it with us and take it back to our communities, our families, and make some decisions. But let's listen. Let's listen.
Let me make a suggestion. Hey, I'm talking to you, booing. What's up? I want to make a suggestion like they do in the spoken word festivals. When you really like something, snap. See how it sounds when we all snap? Everybody snap. Are you too cool to snap? It's too many, you just won't do it. I'm just saying, we want to hear the end of what he's saying, and sometimes when you cheer, we can't even hear what you're liking, so.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Look, I want to go back to the panel, and I want to start with Professor Delaney this time around for this round of questions from our panel here at Chicago State.
Okay. I should add to what Robin said. There's no, for rules of engagement, they forgot to say there is no booing. No booing, okay? There's no booing tonight. We're just trying to listen and get some information. Okay, my question is about the TIF funds account, right? Do you have any idea how much money is currently in the TIF accounts? And can you tell us how you could creatively use those funds to address pressing issues like economic development?
Tax increment financing. It is estimated and reported, and we can't open the book, so we can't quite verify it, that it has a value, the fund, the slush fund that the mayor controls, of $1.7 billion. The mayor will tell you later that most of it has been earmarked, designated, committed to good projects in your neighborhood, although you may not be able to see it. It is one of the audits that I want to engage in to determine exactly what's there and what is free. Tax increment financing should be used in areas that haven't seen development, in hard to redevelop areas, former brownfields, and we need to have transparency about its use. I will appoint an advisory committee to oversee the utilization of this money. I also believe that we need to close the districts that have already completed their mission, where those projects have been completed, so that we quit taking money out of the taxing bodies that are being depleted of it. Chicago Public Schools, the Park District, City Colleges of Chicago. It's taxpayer dollars, and it should be returned to the taxpayers and used for purposes to make development happen where it isn't happening.
You know, I just want to try something here. How many people understand really what TIFs are? Woo, you all better than me. And I cover government every day because it is a very, very confusing situation, you know. And I hear it's almost like a a rallying cry: TIF this, TIF that. And quite frankly, I wonder whether people really understand it. Do you understand it, Mr. Preston? TIFs? Yeah, look at the mic. Got to get the microphone there, because you have a question, I think, that you're going to ask Commissioner Garcia.
Well, if Commissioner Garcia could explain TIF funds for us, that would be excellent.
Whoa, that's a good one. Can you do this? Can you do this okay, pretend now that you're mayor of the city of Chicago, and in 2 minutes, you're going to tell the people of Chicago what a TIF is and why they should care.
TIF is a tool created by government to designate a certain geographic area and to provide an incentive for developers, for-profit or nonprofit, to carry out a project. The money that would be generated in the form of a tax increase on whatever is built, a store, a warehouse, an industrial plant, instead of going to the property taxes, goes into a special fund that is used as an incentive to make that project happen. It is a subsidy, a property tax subsidy that is used to make development where it wouldn't happen for a period of 23 years. So for the life of that new property, that new development, those dollars are siphoned off, taken off the tax rolls until the project is completed. Then it returns to the tax rolls. the increment, the tax dollar value that would have been created goes into this special fund, which acts as a financing mechanism to make that project work. The problem with TIFs has been that they have gone in the downtown area to the rich and wealthy, people like Ken Griffith, to build a new Marriott hotel in the South Loop, to other well-connected developers in Chicago that have relationships with City Hall. It's not even a level playing field because those businesses that are not connected oftentimes cannot get it. It ought to be happening, the dollars should be used in areas and neighborhoods that have been divested in historically where redevelopment is very difficult.
Robin, I want you to remind me to ask the mayor the same question. Okay.
Well, you know, people don't like TIF because it's complex, but it is important. Do you believe that TIF should stay around? Would you get rid of the TIF concept, which was created by late Mayor Harold Washington? Would you get rid of TIF altogether?
TIF can be a tool for making development happen in communities that have suffered from disinvestment. I would keep it, I would scale it down dramatically because we would be taking from those taxing bodies like schools and parks and other taxing bodies that need that money to build and invest in their own infrastructure. And so I would keep it, but I would scale it down and make sure that they pass the test of making development happen where it otherwise would not occur in economically depressed areas.
Can I have one more TIF follow-up? Everybody knows I love TIF. You say that the mayor, it is an estimate of 1.7 billion and 1.9 billion. When you get that high, what's 7 versus 9 billion point? Do you know what those projects are? And are you saying that they are not projects that the city should be engaged in?
I have no doubt that some of them are good projects. Some of them are going to schools. Some of them are going for industrial purposes. But many of them we have no clue because there hasn't been transparency. That's what I will usher in, transparency and accountability with respect to public tax dollars, property tax dollars at that.
Mr. Wendell Mosby, what are you thinking?
So, Commissioner Garcia, like you, myself, I think we share something in common that I'm also elected to Prairie State Community College. And one of the things that, when I was elected, looking at policies that had adverse effects on the district, on the students, and with your breadth of experience, we talk a lot about jobs. And I work for somebody who we try to give opportunities all the time. We just opened a restaurant, and I would say jobs is not the sole solution in our community.
What's the question, Wendell?
I would say that family is. And so if you're elected, can you think about a public policy that had unintended consequences that impacted the black family that you as mayor could reverse or start to rebuild?
Well, the one that I think has had the greatest impact is mandatory sentencing for drug laws.
Whoa.
That is why we have the prison system in this country that disproportionately impacts people of color, African Americans, Latinos, and poor whites, as a matter of fact. So doing away with mandatory sentencing would be one of those. Judges should have the discretion to make those decisions. They're closer to the reality that they live in. They have a better perspective on understanding how to deal with individual situations.
Like, for example, like for things that you could do as mayor, for instance, like in CHA, you know, where people that have criminal backgrounds can't move in, things of that nature that not something to judge or...
I think that the city should be a strong advocate for hiring the formerly incarcerated individuals, because as long as you create barriers for employment for those individuals and ban them from the opportunity to return to their communities, to become productive members of society, to provide for themselves and their families, you're going to be in a situation where you're going to have dire consequences in those communities. At Cook County government, as one example, one of the differences that a chief executive officer, in this case President Tony Perkwinkle, did with support of several commissioners was begin reducing the level, the number of people incarcerated, detained at Cook County Jail. We reduced it over the past 2 years from 10,000 to about 8,500 people, and going down at the present time. How? By using her office as a bully pulpit, by analyzing how people are arrested and incarcerated, and by being cognizant that poor people are always at a disadvantage in terms of access to legal counsel. In other words, you do an environmental analysis of what occurs and you take action on it. That is an example of the type of policy that you don't need legislation for, that a good disposition on the part of a leader can impact communities in a positive way.
Professor Beverly.
In the past 4 years, a number of mental health facilities in the city have been closed under this mayor. Community mental health in this community is a critical need. Have you given any consideration to how you might provide the services that are needed? Does that involve reopening these facilities or outsourcing, or have you given any thought to it?
I have given a lot of thought to it. I've met with the mental health advocate community, a very vocal and active constituency, and I have told them that when I am elected mayor, I will reopen those clinics. Let me share with you why I think they need to be open. Because when we close them, you cut people off from the professional attention that they need and deserve. You also make it more difficult for them to obtain their medications. And you know where they wind up? They wind up at Cook County Jail. Cook County Jail is in my 7th district, and they overwhelm the health system in the jail, and as a consequence, the Cermak Hospital at Cook County Jail is the largest provider of mental health services. Those are not the best conditions to be providing mental health services to affected individuals and their families.
Commissioner, yes. You know what I'm getting ready to ask?
Yes.
You know what I'm getting ready to ask? What?
How are you going to pay for it? ¿Cómo vas a pagar por eso?
You're good.
Right? That's what your wife would ask.
Right.
I would pay for, look, the savings that were alleged to be had have been minuscule. The suffering that people have endured have been huge. The cost to Cook County has more than quadrupled for having to provide the services. Charles, it's a question of priorities. Remember what I will do. I will stop the use of taxpayer dollars to fund the cronies and the connected, the wealthy individuals, and we will divert that money to the neighborhood.
Stop.
This is one potential use of tax increment dollars, Charles.
Okay. You talk about the cronies who are getting money from the Rahm Emanuel administration. Name one. Give me a crony.
Ken Griffith, the wealthiest man in Illinois. Oh, you want another one?
Yeah.
Penny Pritzker.
Penny Pritzker.
Yes.
Huh? Yeah.
The hotel chain that they run. There's two.
See any out there in the audience? Any cronies?
None that I recognize.
Never mind. We don't want to go there. Robin, what do you say?
I have a stack of great questions from the audience, and this one I want a really brief answer. I don't want well, maybe, and if. You've already talked about some creative ways to increase some types of sales taxes. Is a property tax increase on the table when you get in office and see all these deficits from the Chicago Public Schools to the pensions? Is a property tax increase on the table?
I do not see a property tax increase as a viable option at this point because we have not seen the books. People are entitled to see that. Robin, would you buy a house simply by driving down the street and how it looks outside? No. You would want to go inside. You want to check the plumbing. You want to check the electricity. You want to check the walls. You want to see if there's flooding in the basement.
Well, I have to say, it sounds like, Miss, hello. I have to say that it sounds like you're setting us up for a Rahner moment. I didn't know it was this bad. Then you get in office and say, well, we're going to have to cut this, and I can't do that I promised, and because you're saying, I'm not sure what's there. Well, so somewhere there must be some intelligence that gives you some idea of what you might have to do.
I'd like to tell you that I have that intelligence. I can't. We have not seen the books. There aren't independently audited statements, and we need to see what's there.
But how many politicians?
I can't tell you, Charles, I can't tell you that the financial plan that I put forth, 18 pages long, go on my website, read it. It's a solid financial plan, will save Chicagoans $500 million in savings through efficiencies, shared services, and by working collaboratively between the city, the Park District, city colleges. Okay? Those are the sister agencies that appear on people's tax bills when they get their property taxes. And they were increased 11% over the past 4 years.
You know, the last politician that I remember who said that he wanted to raise taxes, I think is sitting at home in Galewood right now, right? The governor,
right.
former governor, I don't know. So, I mean, but politicians just aren't going to tell us if they're going to raise taxes anyway,
Look,
right?
We're going to make some really tough decisions that everyone is going to be angry about. No doubt about that. Tough medicine to be swallowed. Just being candid.
All right, thank you very much. We still have 1,000 tweets at hashtag CSU votes. So I'm going to have your best tweet for me, please, Jasmine.
All right, it says, what is your position on hospitals with trauma centers being so far away from the south side of Chicago?
Good question.
The University of Chicago should open a full trauma center for Chicago's South Side.
Okay, that's a nice brief answer. Nice brief answer. Maybe we can get one more tweet in. Stand up, sir, and tell me your name.
Yes, my name is Darren Martin. I'm a senior at Chicago State University, and I major in early childhood education.
Beautiful. What's your best tweet?
My best tweet from Mr. Garcia is, Chuy, how will you take on the council heavyweights like Ed Burke?
Remember, Chicago, you already made history by forcing the first mayoral runoff in Chicago history. 55% of the voters voted for change. 2, as a result of that, there are 19 council seats hanging in the balance. Chicagoans want change. I think the next mayor and the Chicago City Council will be a much more responsive body. We will work collaboratively. That has been my approach over the life of the time that I've been in office.
All right. As I said, I have a handful of questions. We are at a university. What plans do you have to sustain the quality of higher education at universities in Chicago that are going to be impacted by the 30% budget cut imposed by or proposed by Governor Rahm?
As someone who got their education because of public universities in Illinois, the first one in my family, 3 kids who attended public schools in Chicago, I understand their role and their importance. I will work with people in Chicago and people in higher education throughout Illinois to make sure that the General Assembly does not approve the proposed budget cuts to higher education.
Well, that's a tough job.
Can I ask one? I got a question for you. You know, I asked you this question earlier today, and I'd like you to answer it in front of the people here tonight. You are getting most of your money and a lot of ground troops from the Chicago Teachers Union. But for those of us who are not in the Teachers Union or whatever, I mean, we want to know how you are going to negotiate a new contract with the teachers. Are you going to give away the store? That's what a lot of people worry about, Commissioner. Are you going to give away the store?
There is no store to be given away. There is no store to be given away. No one has that illusion, first of all. We're in dire financial straits. Well, tonight they should take me at my word. There's no store to be given away. Things are in a very, very difficult position. But Charles, you left out the transit workers, you left out the nurses, you left out the truck drivers, you left out a whole lot of other workers. Look, the bottom line here is people want change in Chicago. That's why we have the present predicament, and that's why we're moving forward toward April 7th, because people are tired of the tale of 2 cities. People People want equity, people want opportunity, and they want neighborhood revitalization. It's not my fault.
I want to make sure we get all our honor students in, and let's get one more tweet. Lisa, honor student here at Chicago State, studying
communications.
All right, beautiful. Communicate.
Yes. So, Mr. Chuy, black contractors and developers are overwhelmingly excluded from city contracts. What are your plans to remove these barriers?
My plans are to do just as you said. I stand for equity. I stand for fairness. We will overcome all of the barriers that previous administrations have not been able to do. Why should you trust me? It's my life's work. I've fought for equality of opportunity of people everywhere. When some politicians in my neighborhood wanted to change the attendance boundaries so African American children could not attend the brand new Little Village Lawndale High School, I stood against it, and we prevailed. Those children are attending that school. It is one of the most successful in the city of Chicago.
I'm going to go back to the panel, or is that a wrap?
Yeah, we got, we started about 15 minutes into the hour. We said we'd spend an hour with Commissioner Garcia, unless you'd like to give not a speech, because we've done a few of those, but maybe one more quick question.
Well, no questions here. I mean, if we're getting down to the, we got 15 minutes left. Oh, we good to go. We got 15 minutes left. Let's
a few questions.
I started at that.
We can be here all night.
I'm going to go to Mr. Mosby. I'm going to go to you this time. I'm going to start in the middle and work my way out. What do you think? You had another question? Or if you didn't, you can pass.
I'm going to pass.
Okay. Pass it to Charles Preston, our student here at CSU. Question for Commissioner Garcia.
Many students have a history of minimum wage work. Low wage work is becoming an increasing part of Chicago and the nation's economy. The fast food industry is central to this. 42% of Chicago's fast food workers are African American. Do you feel that the current minimum wage plan values these workers? If not, what plan do you propose? Do you consider the minimum wage a living wage?
Mr. Preston, I stood with the fast food workers on the first day that they initiated their fight for $15 an hour. This morning, I stood with many of those workers in their continuing efforts to ensure that $15 becomes the living wage in the city of Chicago. I do so because I come from a working class family. I've represented districts that have been overwhelmingly working class, including many union members, and I think that in order for there to be neighborhood revitalization everywhere in Chicago, wages need to rise. It's good for the employee, it's good for their family, it's good for their neighborhood.
What do you do about the, they talk about the borders. I mean, we have border cities around the city. The critics of the $15 an hour minimum wage say that businesses will simply locate over the borders, that those businesses on the borders will be hurt disproportionately.
As we raise wages, other people will seek to do the same thing. They only need a good example, and Chicago will give it to them.
Professor Delaney.
You spoke a little earlier about elected school board. And you're in favor of elected school board, right? Can you tell us when you would implement that? When would it be right away? Like, can you say within your first year you would make sure we get an elected school board, or what?
One of my first actions as mayor of the city of Chicago would be to go to Springfield to ask the legislature, to request the legislature to change the legislation so that Chicago can join the rest of the state of Illinois, giving the citizens of Chicago a greater say-so. That is why 90% of voters on February 24th voted for an elected school board. You know who's opposed to an elected school board. Number two, should that fail in this legislative session, I am prepared to go to federal court to ask the federal courts to intervene in giving Chicagoans a say-so over one of the most important institutions of community life.
One follow-up, though, does that not let the mayor off the hook as far as being accountable as to how the schools perform?
I don't think so. We need to have people directing public policy over the Chicago public schools. I think it will usher in a new era of accountability and innovation, and that will be good for Chicago.
Okay.
Very good. I mean, are we...
I got a pile of, questions from the audience.
Bring them, because this is from the audience. I want to hear from the people.
Okay, yes, because as you know, we don't have all the answers. We don't even have all the questions.
Thank you.
Housing has been torn down. On State Street, there are all those vacant lots. Can you build some more affordable housing for families, provide housing for the homeless? But I would add, there's been a huge drop in the number of people that can get CHA housing. CHA is a shadow of what it once was. Is that intentional, and would you make a change in that?
We have a severe shortage of affordable housing in Chicago, especially for families with children. The Chicago Housing Authority has been sitting on almost $444 million of funds over several years. This is a slap in the face to all the 280,000 people on waiting lists, on Chicago Housing Authority lists. We can build new housing, especially when you consider that on an average night in Chicago, there are 6,000 homeless individuals. There are about 21,000 students in high schools in Chicago that have vulnerable housing status. We need to be more aggressive in the construction of affordable housing all over Chicago. I look forward to partnering with nonprofit, with for-profit developers to make that happen. We need to grow our population in Chicago, Robin.
All right. I have something I want you to be really specific on. You stated you plan to fix the financial deficit with creative solutions. They asked, what are the creative solutions? But we don't have that much time. Can you name me just one creative solution?
As I stated previously, we can save taxpayer dollars, $500 million, by having greater collaboration between the city, the Park District, city colleges of Chicago, the 4 principal taxing bodies that come on the tax bill.
What do you mean by collaboration?
By eliminating duplication, by having shared services, by purchasing things collectively. There has to be collaboration. They've all operated and had separate administrative costs. Those can be reduced significantly. We can save up to $500 million in taxpayer dollars.
Okay.
In my financial plan, by the way. So please read it. ChuyForChicago.com.
Commissioner, you know, we're nearing the end here. I want to give you a minute or so. What do you have to say to folks?
First, I'd like to thank Chicago State University students, the administration, and the trustees for sponsoring this event so that we can share with you our views about the future of the city of Chicago. As I stated previously, I want to end the tale of 2 cities in Chicago. That means putting the neighborhoods first. That means focusing the city's resources, working with people in Chicago neighborhoods, being around the neighborhoods, not just for press conferences, engaging people, okay, asking people for their opinion, asking people to come forward with their community plans, redevelopment plans. I want to provide good public schools to every neighborhood. I want to make Chicago neighborhoods safe. I have been a lifelong community builder. I want to be mayor of the city of Chicago. I want to be a mayor for all of Chicago. I will engage Chicagoans, I will respect Chicagoans, and I will listen to what they have to say. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank
Thomas.
you so much, Commissioner Chuy, Garcia. Thank you very much. You know,
keep tweeting, folks. We're
keep
still
tweeting.
live.
Well, that's right. You know, I also, as Commissioner Garcia says goodbye, I must recognize the president, El Presidente, Emil Jones, who just walked in. The meeting, folks, is now official. Thank you. We're going to take a short break here, and then we're going to come back and we're going to hear from Mayor Rahm Emanuel. So stay tuned. Don't change that channel. I thought the first half of this went very well. What'd you think? I mean, we learned some things about Chuy Garcia that we did not know. Where you going, Elsie? You leaving? Okay. If you leave, we're going to have to shut down. I'd like to recognize the treasurer of the great city of Chicago, Kurt Summers.
Let's get it on. Let's present the mayor of the city of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel. What? They're going to give him 2 minutes? Okay. That means I have to work on my two-minute drill here. You know what that means? It's going to take him about 2 minutes to get here. I know that the mayor is someone who is always in a hurry. When I met him, I think 4 years ago, it was actually maybe 4.5 years ago, he was, his first walk as a candidate for the mayor of the city of Chicago was through the streets of Pilsen. And that's where I met him. Actually, I met him a couple of years before then, but that's when I met him in his quest to become the leader of our city. And of course, I've gotten to know Mayor Rahm Emanuel, I guess, you know, in an official way. He and I are not pals, but I spend a lot of time around him covering City Hall as the political reporter at ABC 7. I'll tell you a couple of things about him that I know that maybe the rest of you don't know. Rahm Emanuel is, as I said, he's a very busy guy. He moves very quickly, but one thing I can say about Rahm Emanuel that has impressed me is that the man really loves his family. He really loves his family, and he is very strong in his faith, and I can really appreciate that. I really love that about Rahm Emanuel.
He's there.
And I think the mayor is about ready to approach the stage. I'm going to present him now. The mayor of this, look, hold up, stop. If anybody in here disrespects the mayor of the city of Chicago, you are disrespecting me.
And me.
You know what I'm saying?
And me.
I'm serious about that. It's not worth it. I want to hear what he has to say. I want to hear what he has to say to an African-American audience on the south side of Chicago, where he and the other candidate have really not had this kind of venue to speak. I want to hear him tonight so that I can make an informed decision about who should be the next mayor of this city for the next 4 years. So disrespect him, you disrespect me, you disrespect the panel, you disrespect this institution. And I tell you so civility, folks. I want to again present the mayor of the city of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel.
Hello, thanks for coming.
Okay, we got that out of our system. You gotta have a moment. All right.
Don't worry about the crowd. Am I holding this? Yes, okay, you're gonna have to. Okay, I got it.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Mayor Emanuel, you know, this is going to be, you know, this is a conversation. This is a conversation. We got a panel over there, 4 people.
Sorry about my back.
I met them tonight, most of them for the first time tonight. We've got people here in the audience. We got a Twitter thing going that people are asking questions via Twitter.
You just showed your age. We got a Twitter thing going.
That's right. Hey man, look, I'm not ashamed of my age, man.
Hey, Charles says to the grandkids, "Come on over here."
I praise the Lord every day, and when I wake up, I say, "Thank you, Lord, for giving me another day." That's my thing, man.
All right.
Hey, look. You've been mayor 4 years. You know, this is, you know, we said this earlier before the first candidate was here, that this is the only forum in the black community for this election, and both you guys have spent an inordinate amount of time looking for votes in the black community, and in fact, the editorialists are saying the black community will make the decision which way we go. You know, can you tell us, after 4 years, you were a congressman on the North Side, what have you learned in these 4 years about Chicago's African-American black community in those 4 years?
Sure. Yeah, first of all, let me say one thing. You say this is the only forum. It's the only organized forum. And I say that by way, Charles, you know this. I've been at a lot of L stops, a lot of grocery stores, walking through the aisles. People come up to you and kind of in those forums, they'll talk to you about the issues they care about. So yes, it's the only kind of forum like this, but don't think at an L stop where people are on their way to work and they stop or coming home. That's an individual forum where they ask you the questions. So from an organized perspective, you're right. One, I would say the first and foremost, like everybody in the city of Chicago, they have incredible passion and love for their city.
I'm talking about the black community now.
But the black community loves the city of Chicago too.
I just want to keep it.
I think
I want to keep it.
Well, let me know. But I want to. You said what I learned is the reason folks are here. You could be with your family. You could be somewhere else. You chose to be here because this election is important, and the future of the city is where you want your kids to grow up in. So I would say, when you say, what have I learned? Like everybody else, they love their city. And they're passionate about it. And we wear our politics, we wear our passion on our sleeve. And that's a good thing. That's what makes Chicago unique. Two, they're also very passionate about their neighborhood, just like everybody else. And they want the same things. They want a great community where their kids can grow up, have the chance to make the most of their lives, and to also continue to be part of the city, meaning that when they get an education, they get an opportunity, they don't have to go somewhere else. They can do it right here in the city of Chicago. And I say this, let me say this. 100 years ago, my grandfather came to this city from Eastern Europe, 13 years old by himself. Not a word of English. Third grade education. Working as a truck driver, steel worker. Went from Lawndale, met my grandmother at a dance in Douglas Park, then moved to Albany Park. And his grandson is the mayor of the city of Chicago. This is the greatest city in America. People from all parts of it, and you just had Chuy. Chuy's parents are immigrants to the city of Chicago. You have two sons who are parents were immigrants. This is a great city. And so to the African-American community, there are particular issues. Not only do they have passion and love, they have passion and love for their kids, and they also have a passion and love for a city that they do not feel has totally represented them and be part of their lives.
We're just talking, you know. But so why do you think then the city?
We're just talking.
Why do you think the city is so segregated?
Well,
because if white folks and black folks and Latino folks all love the city, why do we not love each other?
Well, that is, I don't buy that we don't love each other. And I don't buy that.
We can't live together.
I also don't buy that, Charles. Let me say this. We are not going to be the city where you need to be and want to be for our kids if we don't find what's our commonality. We can have differences without being difficult with each other. I don't accept that. And I would say to you, as an elected official and as a leader in the media, you and I collectively have a responsibility to allow our differences never to become a point where we become difficult with each other. And the history, as you said, of segregation, that goes way back. That goes way back, and what we do will determine whether we build the bonds of commonality or we allow our differences to become more exacerbated than they actually are. And my responsibility as mayor, as a leader and an elected official, is to help people find that common ground together so we can work together and build a city that everybody feels they have a chance in. If you don't feel this city, and here's the way I would explain it.
Go ahead.
You said we're having a conversation.
Yeah, we are, but you're doing all the talking.
Okay. You're doing all the asking. And I'm answering it, and none of these answers. Well, let me say this. if Chicago's issue of separation on races, you want me to get that down to 60 seconds?
Well,
that's a long
here's
answer.
the problem.
Okay?
I got these people that want, I mean, I went philosophical.
I'll be real quick. I'll be real quick.
Okay.
Okay? I believe if a child in Woodlawn or Englewood or Pullman or Auburn, Gresham, or Chatham looks at this city coming out of their school, coming out of their place of worship, let's say they look downtown and they see this energy and this power, and they think that that energy, that power, that optimism, that strength that's represented in the city skyline does not encompass them, we're not going to be the city we can be. If they think that that skyline and all that energy and that power, that embodies and could be part of their future, then we're going to be the city we can be, because we can't have anybody feel that that's a separate city. Okay?
Thank you. I want to talk to you, Professor Beverly. You started us off the last time. I want you to start us off this time. Professor Beverly, yes.
Mr. Mayor, I just heard your last statement about the kids in those communities, and yet I'm struck by the closing of 50 public schools. So upon reflection, and I'm assuming this isn't a decision that you entered into sort of quickly and then put it behind you, I'm going to assume that you've reflected on this since that decision was made. Would you have done anything differently in closing those schools and impacting the communities that those schools are in?
Professor Beverly, when I became mayor 4 years ago, we were underinvesting in the city of Chicago's education for our children across the waterfront. Half our kids had a half day of kindergarten. Our kids had the shortest school day and the shortest school year in America. That's an underinvestment. Over 130 buildings, over 130, were more than 50% under-enrolled, underperforming, and under-resourced. We also had 4 out of 10 kids dropping out from high school. In 4 years, we're now at 70% graduation rate because of the hard work of our principals and teachers and parents and our students. In 2 years' time, we're going to be at 82%, one of the leaders in the country of any major urban system. In the schools that you talked about, as part of that underinvestment, we have invested $1.3 billion in 400 schools' physical upgrade, including the receiving schools. The receiving schools now have air conditioning. They have labs, science labs. They have new physical upgrade HVAC systems. All the kids have iPads, and every child walks on a safe passage route to schools. And according to the University of Chicago, 93% of them now are going to a better performing academic school than they were before. And across the waterfront, I have taken on the challenges of making sure we invest in our kids' future and education, because kids start dropping out of college in 3rd grade, which is why we have not only full-day kindergarten for all our children. Next year, we're going to universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds from families in need. And with a rising graduation rate, the next thing we're doing is, if you get a B average, we'll be the first city in America where community college will be free. And of those schools, 12 of them are already on their way to being repurposed in some way. Libby in Englewood is now a pre-K center. We brought President Clinton there to see, with a parent-teacher conference, with a center, parent-teacher early childhood center. Lafayette is the permanent home now to the Chicago Fine Arts High School, which didn't exist before, and 10 others are being repurposed to integrate it academically, or rather economically, into the community. But I didn't just walk into one challenge, walked into a series of challenges, from financial, capital, to educationally. Our kids and our schools were underinvested in.
So you say that you could, if there was an elected school board, then you don't think an elected school board would have made that kind of decision? Is that a contention of yours?
He asked a different
I
question.
know, but I'm following up. I get a chance to do that in this format, I think.
Not when my back's to you.
Well,
No,
but you can't turn to me, man. We're talking to people here.
Charles, it was a joke.
Yeah,
It's Charles. Okay. It was
but the question.
Lighten up. It's like 8 o'clock at night, man.
But I
Don't
mean,
worry about it. All right, here's the deal. Lighten up. I was a joke, Charles. It may not have been a good joke, but it was a joke. Here's the deal. The way I see it. I know this. 87% of the kids in the city of Chicago are from poverty or below. 87%. You want to talk about income disparity in life? If you were trying to bridge economic disparity, would you ever have designed the shortest school day and the shortest school year in America? Nobody came to the city of Chicago to study the Chicago example to take back to their city. We now have a full school day and a full school year that equals the full potential of every child in the city of Chicago.
But Mayor.
And I don't think, no, I'm going to finish right to your answer, and I don't think an elected school board would have ended a 20-year dispute and debate about a full school day. It took leadership and courage to say that every kid counts in the city of Chicago.
You answered the
every
question.
child.
Very good. You answered the question.
Right.
We got
And
it.
I don't think we also had 12,000 of 30,000 kids had a half day of kindergarten. Who do you think the 12,000 kids were there with a half day of kindergarten, whose parents had to run home, run out of work, get on a train, pick up a kid, get them to another type of service, and then get back to work on time? The early childhood and half day kindergarten was not working for our children, and it wasn't working for mom very well either. And that's what we did to our families across the city of Chicago. By conscious design, and we ended that.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm really not cutting you off. It's just that I want to get a lot of questions.
I got a lot to say.
You do. I want to go to Mr. Mosby for our next question. He's on our panel here. I'm sorry, you know, we didn't do the, Wendell Mosby is the chairperson of Young and Powerful Political Action Committee. The Young and Powerful Political Action Committee. Yes.
Yes, the same committee that raised $300,000 for President Obama. So, my question, Mayor, notwithstanding the school closings, is there, if you look back and say, well, if I'm re-elected, is there a policy that you, from your office, you see that has unintended consequences that has impacted the families, the black families? That you would say, you know what, for example, I know that you did for the CHA, being able to let people who had criminal backgrounds be able to move back in, a small number of that, but is there any other policies that you said that had unintended consequences that you would implement re-elected?
You did start this example, and it's actually, let me give you there's 3, okay? When you say unintended, we started a pilot that had never existed. Biggest issue for ex-offenders, housing. So we started a program to figure out using housing and CHA how to have ex-offenders come back in because they were looking for shelter and so they're not homeless. Second, we're the only city that did this, working with Springfield. I led the effort, we changed it, a number of people we worked on here. Our youth, if they got caught, had to expunge their record, had to hire a lawyer to get their record cleared for the rest of their lives, which stopped them from student aid and college assistance that would have affected them coming here. I changed it in Springfield, where a child now, if you commit a nonviolent misdemeanor or below, your record is automatically expunged. 16,000 kids are affected that way. And it affects them the rest of their lives. Third, the public transportation CTA, the largest ex-offender program in America at a public transportation system. And if you want an ex-offender not to be a repeat offender, you got to start with a job. And I've just given you 3 examples, and I will tell you what I'm most proud about, and it's a number of people in this room we worked through from both the religious community and elected officials. We went from 400 kids a year, and it could have been 5, but in that hundreds, who got their record cleaned, to 16,000 kids a year who will have their record at no effort expunged so they can get a college loan, they can get a career, they can be on with the rest of their lives. 16,000 a year. now have a clean record and a brighter future than the door being shut on them. Just that change alone. That's it. And I also believe, I really do believe this, we're in a place of higher learning. I'll be quick, Charles. I can see out of the corner of my eye.
Well, thank you.
I got that hand waving right there out of the periphery of my eye. We're going to be the first city that goes from the kindergarten to 12th grade model to a pre-K to college model. You earn a B average at Chicago Public Schools, community college will from now on be free. Free. First city in America. And I know it's a good idea because President Obama tried to copy it. It's a real good idea. Go ahead.
Mayor, I'm going to cut in here because I want to get to just some of the stuff that they're saying about you in this campaign. Mayor 1%, the downtown mayor, the guy who doesn't care about the neighborhoods. I mean, what do you, come on now, I'm just trying to get him to respond to this stuff that we hear in the campaign. And how do you rebut that? Why are you not? I mean, you are a millionaire. You made a lot of money in a very short period of time. I mean, you go to exotic vacations. I mean, people in Chicago want to go to the Dells. You go to Chile. You go to, okay. No, listen to me, man. I mean, people think you're some kind of disconnected millionaire mayor who only cares about hedge fund guys.
Okay, let me.
But tell people that you're not.
Okay. No,
I'm serious, man.
First of all, let me say this. I make no bash, I provide for my family. And as you just said when you introduced me, my parents, when they raised us, took us on trips. I think it's a great education that my kids went not only to the Far East, not only to Latin America, they've also been to Kenya, Uganda, Zambia, because I want them to see the world. And that's part of an education. And I will never make bones about being the father I want to be for my children. It's the most important job I have. And I know that you guys make fun of me, and you guys, wait a second, Charles, this is the answer part. You always make a big deal where I take my kids. I will never let my kids play second fiddle to my job. They're my children, and I'm their father. Well, now, I'm going to answer your question. Okay. Hold on. I get to answer. Let me say this.
But do you worry about the optics?
No, about my children? No, I worry about their future. No. So let me say this. The city of Chicago is raising the minimum wage by 40%. Springfield didn't do it. Washington, D.C. didn't do it. Chicago's doing it. Now that, I don't know of anybody in the best off financial position who works at a minimum wage. And I got it done. We then did the living wage. Second, we now have a plan where I forced the real estate community to put $90 million into a fund for 40,000 affordable housing units in the city of Chicago. I don't know of a lot of people in the best income bracket that live in affordable housing. And maybe you do, but I don't. I don't know of a lot of people in the top economic bracket who work at the minimum wage, but I'm going to tell you this, from now on in the city of Chicago, work's going to pay. We're going to raise the minimum wage to $13. Third, all the corporations used to get a 40% deduction for their luxury skyboxes at our sporting facilities. Working with City Council, we closed that loophole. Those are 3 examples where I told folks, whether it's the minimum wage, affordable housing, or tax deductions for corporations, that policy is not in the interest of the city of Chicago, and that's the working fact. And finally, I'll add this. We have a number of systems in our public transportation system. The first system I picked to rebuild, putting 2,000 people on work to build, was Red Line South. We working with the Urban League, got 200 people from the community working on that project, who finally got into the trades. And we have over 60% of the contracts went to minority and women-owned businesses to build the Red Line. And that became the standard for all of CTA. And with the water investments we're making, we opened up all the building trades to apprentices and made sure that the building trades reflect all parts of the city of Chicago.
So that has to really anger you when they call you Mayor 1%, they say you don't care.
I know what my record is, and I know who I'm helping, and I'm proud of not only have been in Congress, proud of the work we did as mayor, proud of serving both President Clinton and Obama and seeing their agenda through, and I know why I fight for progressive policies that make a difference in people's lives, and I know what I've done, from a minimum wage to affordable housing to making sure we're investing in our communities.
There's a woman standing over there who's giving me the eyes. She wants to get involved here.
I got a stack of questions from the audience that you could sit on and eat breakfast. But I'm going to combine two that are similar to what you were just talking about. One young lady over here wants to know what you can do to restore the balance that the people of Chicago will feel like, we got what you got. And so along with that is another question more specific. It's reported that it cost $55 million to build Maggie Daley Park and $20 million went into the new ice rink. I realize a lot of the money was donated. What have you done to get money donated to the South and West Sides? All right. Y'all like the answer? He hasn't even answered yet. You just like the question?
We're rebuilding 325 playgrounds in every part of the city of Chicago. So every part. Second, the single biggest economic impact, getting the presidential library in the city of Chicago. You are not, wait a second. I believe concise, clear, consistent leadership. If you know another $500 to $600 million investment that will create thousands upon thousands of jobs either on the south side or west side, I have an inbox. Get it to me. I'll hustle and get it. It is, and I have been clear and concise from day one. That it can be on the south side, it can be on the west side, but it cannot be on the upper west side of Manhattan. And that job, and the other thing is, not far from here, working with Alderman Michelle Harris. I thought Michelle was right. Where's Michelle? There she is. We announced just 4 months ago, the first time ever, Gately Park, we're going to build an indoor track facility for the kids of the city of Chicago so they can compete for the scholarships for track and field and go to college. That has been a project discussed for 30 years. We got the money. We put the money up at our local level. We got state money, building that park and raising the resources to do it.
All right, I'm not cutting you off, but I do have 6 honor students here from Chicago State University, and as soon as we get through your panel at least one time, we want you to meet each of them and hear their assessment of the best tweet that they are recording, #CSU votes. So go on and continue with the panel and then get ready for our honor
Charles
students.
Preston is a student here at Chicago State University. He has a question for you, Mayor.
A recent ACLU report found that CPD committed 240,000 stops that did not result in arrest, stop and frisk. This is 4 times the rate of New York City. What is your plan to address the hyper-surveillance and targeting of black Chicagoans by CPD?
Thank you. Mr. President, thank you for that question. It's an important question. Our police put their lives on the line every day, just like my uncle. Let me just finish. This is important. Hey, it's a very important question. My uncle was a police officer in Chicago. They put their lives on the line every day. The most important part of policing is community policing, building trust every day. 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And we have a policy that racial profiling is not accepted in the city of Chicago, not practiced by our police department. Can't be. It doesn't fight crime. Essential to that effort is, as I said, building trust, which is why I've boosted community policing. It's why we've made sure we're going to start now a pilot on the body cams. So there's building trust. In addition to that, I'll give you one anecdote. I met a mother when we were cutting a ribbon at one of the playgrounds in Englewood. She said because the officers on the bike, she can trust now her kids to go into the playground. We doubled the amount of officers on bikes outside of downtown because that's part of building trust. Officers practicing community policing, commanders practicing community policing, the superintendent and the first deputy practicing community policing is building trust. You need a community to trust and work with the law enforcement community to bring safety to every part of the city. You don't want to militarize the police. It's a civilian force. And part of that means working together. And I'll give you an example. Fred Waller in the 6th District. Great commander. He does night out in the parks where he does a camp for kids and out in the evening so they can watch nature and be part of that. Over in the 9th District, they have a league between police officers and kids, a basketball league. That is all about building trust between the police community and the community they're part of. And as I said—
Mayor, I don't want to interrupt, but can I ask something? Can I follow up?
I want to finish.
Because that's what they want me to do. But
I want to finish one thing.
But that's a long thing.
I got to finish one thing.
Okay.
I know it's a long thing, but this is a big issue.
Yeah, I know, but I wanted to ask, did you call when you read those statistics about stop and frisk,
I did.
was there a meeting between you and Superintendent McCarthy about what happened?
We were on the phone. We had a conversation about it. And here's the thing. A year and a half ago, I had Gary McCarthy, Al Weisinger, their first deputy, revise the rules and make sure that they're constantly looking at and investigating how we can do a better job, because you cannot do the safety you need if there's no trust between the community.
Do you hold him accountable for that, those stats?
I hold myself, as well as him, as well as Al Weisinger, as well as the leadership of the police department, to making sure that community policing, which is essential for the trust, is built every day. And gotta be honest, there are good days and bad days at that level. There's just no doubt about it.
Kim, I'm sorry, you haven't met these people. Dr. Kim Delaney, she's professor of African American Studies here at CSU. Right. Your question for the mayor.
Okay, I'm going to stay on that a little bit on what you were talking about. I think those examples you gave of things that are going on in the community, programs and things, that's really important, the things you were talking about. One example, one of those things that is happening is over at St. Sabina with Father Flager, who's a dear friend of mine. He has a program where the police officers play basketball with the gang members and all of that. So my question is, and so all of that you're talking about in community, forging these relationships is very important. My question is there money that can be put into those programs to replicate that money available to replicate those programs in other neighborhoods where there's high violence?
Where there's not violence, or
where there's high
Oh, I thought you said where there's not violence. I was like, okay. Dr. Delaney, great question. So I went to, it's like Boo from, Kill a Mockingbird, man, right back there. We have this thing called Windy City Hoops. At 11 Park District facilities throughout the city of Chicago. Isaiah Thomas and I set it up, actually raised private money, about $500,000 from the private sector. And it's Friday and Saturday night, open to midnight or 11 o'clock. In 11 different communities, or 11 different communities at 11 different Park District facilities. It has both coaches, timekeepers, police officers, so kids have a safe place to go playing basketball at Park District facility with adults there and police officers, that kind of activity. I'll give you one at Columbus Park. Do we have time for a story or no?
Well, not too long.
Okay.
But, go ahead, try it.
All right, I met a young man who was, that first night we opened it up. Unbelievable young man who was trying to just play basketball. We were talking. We kept talking for about 45 minutes. So I'm going home to go to Sabbath dinner Friday night. I said, I'm walking out. He says, I said, where are you going? He says, I'm going home. I said, well, get in the car. I'll drive you home. So about a mile, this is on the west side of the city of Chicago, Columbus Park in Deborah Graham's ward. We take him to his home. I'm about to get out to walk in the front door. He grabs my hand, and he says, I want to thank you. I said, what do you think of me? He goes, I live a blessed life because of what you've done. He became an intern in my office. He's now working, becoming a chef, and he's at Gibson's. So that's the kind of things that we're doing throughout the city of Chicago, and we're trying to expand. It's called Windy City Hoops. That very activity, and the officers are there, not just the mentors, to build trust between the public safety community and the community they have to represent. It is those shared experiences that you're going to call upon when something bad happens.
Robin, You're over there thinking. I hear you thinking.
I am thinking. Mr. Mayor, you have to realize, remember, these are tweets that we are giving you from our honor roll students here at Chicago State. The tweets are 140 characters, so you cannot give us an anecdote in your answer, okay? Deal? No story? No. All right, so we're going to keep, because I want to get through all 6 of them. They're wonderful students, and they've been working hard on this. First, Lisa.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, how do you plan to convince African Americans to vote for you when the unemployment rate in the black community is the 3rd highest in the nation?
Okay, we can't take up time with cheering, even though that's a good question. Mr. Mayor?
It's a great education.
Okay.
And well, you asked me how to do it quickly. And
I like that.
Education is the key to economic success, which is why I've poured all my heart and soul into making sure from pre-K to kindergarten to full school day to community college, you have an opportunity and the trades to make the most of your life. That's as quickly as I can say it.
Okay, well, we know you're trying.
There's more than I would like to say.
I know, but
okay.
Okay, Darren.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. My question for you is, I wonder how familiar you are with our neighborhoods in the African American communities and the minority communities. And can you name 2 of your favorite African American restaurants on the south side and the west side of Chicago?
Yeah.
Trick question.
Yeah, no, it isn't. Chicken and Waffles that I was at today in Bronzeville, and Mother Wade's restaurant on the south side.
Okay, that was nice and quick too. And now we have Jasmine.
How you doing, Mr. Mayor? Your current administration is made up of roughly 17 whites, 4 blacks, 3 Hispanics, and 3 Asians, 85% of which are not Chicagoans. Moving forward, how do you plan to create an administration that reflects diversity and inclusion of everyday Chicagoans?
That's well, you said, let's go through, and I'll go through my entire administration top to bottom. And I believe I have work to do every day, and I'm never settling on what I have, and I'll continue to draw on all the talents, which is why I've made also sure that all parts of the city get a chance to also work for the city.
Okay.
I'm trying to make this as...
You're doing good. You're doing very well.
Yeah,
I got a lot
Speed round is this is your strength.
No, it ain't.
May not be fun for you.
I'm a middle child. I got a lot to say.
All right. Aside from adding more police officers, in what ways do you plan to decrease recidivism in the city?
That's from Brandon, that's
Brandon's
Brandon's favorite tweet.
I love your question. When I became mayor, 14,000 kids had summer jobs. This year, we're going to hit 24,000 in the face of massive state and federal cuts.
All right.
You want kids to be safe, and you want them on the right. You want recidivism, and we started the One Summer Plus in Chicago. It was a 1,000 kids experiment. Magic Johnson just gave us $10 million to take it up to 5,000 kids, and those were kids that were coming into the criminal justice system.
All right, and now we have Hannah.
What programs do you have for the youth to keep them out of trouble in crime-ridden areas?
We have after-school, summer jobs, and a great school. And so I told you about the summer jobs program. It's actually the largest it's ever been in the history of the city. We've increased our after-school programs by 30%, adding about, collectively, about 10,000 more kids to those activities, and making sure our kids have a great education, because I think that's the most essential thing. I believe for too long as a city, we thought our only responsibility was when the bell went off at the beginning of the day. I believe when the bell goes off after the day and when the bell goes off after the school year, we still have a responsibility to our children, which is why I've made a commitment on after school and summer jobs. In every budget, we have increased resources.
Thank you very much. Hashtag CSU votes. As I've said, the audience members, you've given me some great questions. We won't get to them all, but I've noticed that the majority of what I've gotten in the last 15 minutes are all on the same subject. So let me just put it in, and you've talked about it a little bit, about more community policing and the relationship and trust with the police, but a simple, what are you going to do about the police that are harming, beating, killing the young people? That is the, let me finish. So do you think the police are okay? They just need to have a better relationship with people, or do you think there needs to be a change within the police department? It's kind of, I'm going to boil down all these questions.
Yeah, Robin, I don't think it's, look, this is good policing and safety go together. So police officers are putting their life on the line every day. And in addition to that, though, they have to work at building that trust from the beat officer all the way up to the superintendent, and nobody gets a pass on community policing. And it's not, that's why Dr. Delaney, right? Her question is right on point. These moments, whether it's camping, basketball, activities, officers on bicycles. The interaction, the trust, and the building of community relationships are essential to public safety. A police force cannot be an occupying force. They have to be integrated and integral to working with a community. And if they do that, we're going to see public safety. That's why community policing in Chicago is no longer an office, but a philosophy that spreads through the department, and we work on it every day.
Okay.
Mayor, I just want to intervene here before we go back to the panel, but didn't you recommend a property tax increase last year when you were trying to figure out how to pay for this first half of pension reform? Didn't you do that before you went to the telephone tax to do that first year? And why wouldn't people think you'd go back to the property tax to deal with some of these huge obligations the city is facing over the next year?
Okay, two things. I've done 4 budgets in a row without a property tax increase.
It's a great talking point you use, but what about that property tax question
Charles,
now?
you got to, Charles, that's not, you know that? No, that's not fair. So
no, but you do talking points a lot, and I just wanted to try to get down to the, I wanted to drill down just to.
All right, second thing is, we have done 2 pensions in agreements, which are 2 more than ever been done, without a property tax. I recommended it, people rejected it, so I changed it. Third, as it relates to public safety, Springfield mandated a property tax. That's what 35 of 38 calls for. I've laid out a specific plan, not a commission, not somebody unaccounted, unelected group after the election that you don't know what's going to do. I've said reform and revenue go together, and I've outlined 3 ways to avoid a property tax increase, which is what I've done from my budgets to the other prior pension agreements.
But it's not off the table, then I guess it's.
I do think I've given you 3 relevant revenue sources: a modernized, more reformed, progressive sales tax, a Chicago-based, Chicago-run casino, and TIF surplus all help you pay for, but including reforms. Now here's the difference. My opponent doesn't agree with reforms, which is what I used on laborers, what I did also on the municipal agreement, which means all the burden has to be on taxes and on neighborhood service cuts, meaning graffiti removal, tree planting, garbage collected, including property taxes, are the only places. I have been forthright. Reforms are a place that have to be part of any pension solvency. That means it's a more balanced approach.
But you know, one thing he said when he was here is that he's now on board with this notion of expanding the sales tax, which is something, a detail that we hadn't gotten before.
That's because there's
right here at Chicago State. I think he made some news.
Well, great, whatever. But I mean, I've been there since 2011, and I've been clear about it. And now it's a viable option in Springfield. And if we have a strong voice in the mayor, we're going to make sure that whatever they do, Chicago actually, it comes not at Chicago's expense, but we get the resources, and it helps us avoid a property tax increase.
Philip Beverly.
Mr. Mayor, as the first mayor to face a runoff in our current electoral configuration, what message did you receive from the citizens and the voters of this city about your first term, that they didn't sort of overwhelmingly endorse you?
You noticed, huh? Look, I think I addressed that. There are things they may have liked on the policies, but the mistakes I made, I own, they're mine. And I've been forthright about that. And like I will say to you, which is true what I said to, when I worked in the White House for President Clinton, if I knew in the first year of the first term what I knew by the first year of the second term, we'd all be smart. And you learn things all along the way. And whatever mistakes I've made, I own. In the effort of leading change, I have a responsibility to help people see change as a friend, not as a foe. We can't stay with a status quo that's failing. We kept doing the same thing we were doing 4 years ago. The same jump at companies, families, and jobs would be fleeing the city of Chicago. Prior to my tenure, more families left the city of Chicago than any other city in America. Jobs were fleeing. So staying with that strategy would have cost you more families, more jobs, more companies. Making the reforms necessary, making the changes necessary, Dr. Beverly, also meant helping people buy into that change so they saw that as an advantage for them. And I'll give you an example. I know, Charles, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just said that up front, so you gave me a chance to take a breath. When I came into office, we had a furlough policy. I mean, people were working 4 days. They took basically a pay cut. I said we're going to eliminate the furlough, but we had to come up with $60 million. I said, here's my 30, and I challenged organized labor to come up with 30. It was a process every day, publicly. We got there, we got the furlough eliminated, everybody got 5 days and their 5-day pay, and we found the $60 million. I realized that's a pretty costly, politically costly way to operate. So I said, we're going to have to make some changes. On McCormick Place, we worked together. McCormick Place now is #1. Job creation, 10,000 jobs came to the city of Chicago. Every contract we negotiated never went to arbitration because we worked out that agreement. I knew we had to operate different, and I told our folks we had to change, and I led that effort. And that's going to be true going forward.
You know, I want to ask you about a couple of things you did during this first term where you had black folks just shaking their heads. When you tried to rename Stony Island for Bishop Arthur M. Brazier, and you backed off, then you tried to name a high school on the north side for President Barack Obama, you backed off that. Those were missteps, and again, I said people were kind of shaking their heads after that. What do you say about those decisions and reversals of those decisions? What do you say about that today?
I would say, look, I made a mistake and I was quick to change it. I never said I'm not perfect. When I make a mistake, I hear it, I change it. Now, what I will tell you, and I don't have a problem saying that, okay? But I won't make an apology for the fact I think President Obama's a great president. I wanted to honor him. I wanted to have the city with the first school named after him. In my rush to do it, I clearly offended people, so I backed off of it. I will never back off of my love and affection for a great president, but I made a mistake.
Everybody kind of understood that part of it. Well, they just didn't understand the north side part of it.
I made a mistake. I also think Dr. Brazier is a person who's been incredibly... Well, we'll look past that too. But I made him in my attempt to honor somebody who has been an essential and important person in the city of Chicago. I offended people, so I backed up and said, okay, I'm not going to do it. But I don't change the sense we have to, in some way, whether it's President Obama or in the other case, Dr. Brazier, acknowledge people who have done significant things. We have an airport, 2 of them named after, Midway Airport, O'Hare Airport. These are people who have been transformative in the city of Chicago.
I don't think Midway was a guy.
No, I was going to say, but we have airports named after, obviously, battleships.
Yeah.
I made a mistake, and I was quick to say, got it.
Kim Delaney is just itching to ask a question, I think. Were you? You weren't?
Yeah. I was saying we had 10 minutes, but I do have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. My question is, how much money is available in the TIF fund account, TIF funds? Can you tell us that? And can you tell us how you would creatively use those funds, or if you're willing to use those funds, to address pressing issues like economic development?
I am so happy you asked this question. Okay. I highly recommend, since we're in a place of higher learning, Greg Hines' story, 2 of them, in Crane's business. When I came to office, the TIFs were under suspicion because people thought they'd been dealing from the bottom of the deck. So one of the first things I did in the first 3 months, I put a task force together. I put all the information online. You can track today every dollar. Track it, it's online. I then took today of the 1.5 billion, 8 and maybe 1.6, so I'm not going for exact number, but directionally, 80% of the money goes to public schools, public parks, public libraries, public transportation, or streetscapes, all in our neighborhoods. 80% of the dollars. A direct reversal of what was happening before. Of those resources, and I believe the reason I concentrate on those 5, the foundation for any viable neighborhood where you want to raise your family and where you want to have a viable retail commercial viability in your community. You need good schools, good public transportation, good parks, good libraries. That's why we put the resources. But let me also then add 2 examples. We're doing $10 million of TIF for the Whole Foods in Englewood. Otherwise, it wouldn't come. And Englewood today has 30 different entrepreneurs in and around the community who are all going to have products on their shelf. Pullman factory, not far from here, the first new factory, the Method factory in Pullman, received TIF dollars in Pullman, the first factory in 30 years. I'm proud that we have used the TIF dollars, 80% of it, in our neighborhoods on economic development.
Mayor,
yeah.
I want to thank you.
I want to thank you.
Thank you for coming here, and people are glad to see you, man. They want to hear from you. And wait a minute, stop.
We had the most fun we had all night is with the tweets. So can we get one more round of quick tweets, quick answers? 2 minutes? Okay.
You guys have an interesting policy of family friendly. I got kids, man.
Okay. We are. Okay. You're gonna go first, Hannah. Quick.
Okay. Are you going to raise taxes in your next term?
Well, I'd say this, my next budget will not have a property tax increase in it. I can't say no to taxes because I've been very clear to avoid a property tax increase. We have to look at sales, we have to look at casino, and we have to look at an aggressive surplus as it relates to TIF. But I have spent 4 budgets and 2 pension agreements on how to avoid property tax increases.
All right, Darren.
How do you plan?
Brandon.
How do you plan to help the mentally ill in Chicago, especially on the South Side, since the majority of the clinic closures were on the South Side?
When I was a congressman, I helped pass mental health parity, which meant that insurance companies couldn't cut you off in the middle of your therapies. They used to get 2 visits done, working with Patrick Kennedy. When I became mayor, 90% of the funds we got from the state were being cut because of how bad our mental health system was. So I went about reforming it, and in that reform, working with federally qualified entities, we added, for the first time in the history of the city of Chicago, psychiatric care, and we opened up more clinics working with those federally qualified entities.
Okay, and now Jasmine.
How you doing? Mr. President, why do all the tough budgetary decisions?
Mayor.
So far.
I was putting you up there, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right.
Why do all the tough budgetary decisions and policies impact the poor and minority and not the wealthy?
All right, I'll give you 2 things. I already told you I closed the loophole for corporate deductions at skyboxes at all our sporting facility. Closed it. Companies in the city of Chicago used to go to Kankakee to buy stuff so they avoided our sales tax. Close that. Those are 2 examples specifically of what I've done in the budget, and that allowed us, in this last budget, to balance a budget without a property tax increase by directly hitting and making sure other people paid their fair share.
Okay, you're basically saying that the wealthy got hurt by that.
Hello, Mayor. Yes, hello, Mayor. Yes, my question is, why are taxpayer funds, public taxpayer funds, being used to build a private university for DePaul University?
And now I have like 10 seconds for you to answer that.
Well, Robin.
I know.
Well, first of all, they're not. Second of all, McCormick, the resources are going, as you said, they're going to actually building a hotel. When I became mayor, McCormick Place had dropped to 5th, and it was the largest facility in the world. We're now number 1. We've created 10,000 jobs in the hospitality industry, and by investing in McCormick Place's future, those next 10,000 jobs will not be going to Orlando and Vegas. They're going to come to people here in the city of Chicago.
Okay, that's our last question. Lisa, I'm sorry because they cut us off a while ago, but just...
Last question, last tweet. How can we invest more funding to help Black businesses grow so that funds generated in the Black community circulate back into the community?
Excellent question. Give me your name. Give me your name again.
Lisa.
Lisa, excellent question. You know, I was working with today, Kurt Summers and I, the new treasurer, were in Chatham at a facility 4 years ago. It was all about microlending. We started the first city with a new microlending program, of which 800 jobs were either saved or created. 200 businesses got it. It's in that kind of $15,000, $20,000 range where no bank will look at you and no family member will ever talk to you again until you get your own financing. Over 60% of the funds go to African American businesses. Second, it's now self-sustaining. We opened up 5 new community centers, business centers, to help specifically minority businesses get up and running, or small businesses get up and running. Third, what we did specifically on the Red Line South, with working with the Urban League and the businesses, over 60% of the businesses that worked on the Red Line South were African American businesses. In fact, a journalist by the name of Charles Thomas actually complimented the Red Line looking like the community and the businesses, unlike what happened at Dan Ryan 20 years ago, and unlike what happened at Metro just 3 years ago. And all those businesses now are the standard for the Blue Line, Red Line North, where we're building. And making sure, lastly, when Whole Foods goes to Englewood, they've now held 3 workshops for entrepreneur businesses to get their products on their shelves, not just for Englewood, through the Whole Foods network. The same thing with Mariano's. Mariano's now in Bronzeville, that's being built. The construction firm is from Bronzeville, African American. The architect who built the boathouse in Chinatown, African American, from Bronzeville, is the architect on the Bronzeville Mariano's. Examples of every policy we've done to make sure every part of the city of Chicago is participating in a city that's creating jobs and a vibrant city where businesses are finally coming back. And we have more work to do.
All right, thank you.
Mayor
Thank
Rahm,
you, honor
Emanuel.
students. Thank you, tweeters.
Thank you so much.